So our message this morning is entitled Timelessness. I did tell you last week, if you were here, that we were going to be talking about that aging process or lack of. And so let's look at the word timelessness. The less means without, and the ness means the quality of being. So what we're looking at with timelessness is the quality of being without time. Now just whisper those words within yourself. The quality of being without time. If you just say the first words, the quality of being, you're already there without time, right? I am timeless. And that is the truth of us. And so our goal today is to help us understand that reality in a greater way. So let's begin by looking at how we step into time and how we are oriented toward the idea of time from a very young age. Indeed, when each of us as a new mother or father gives birth, we start immediately trying to train that child to have a schedule, right? We don't want to get up at any old time or all times during the night, so we train that schedule. Thus it begins, that we begin stepping into thinking that we are the human realm when really we are, but we are so much more than that. We are the divine realm. And some of us maybe still remembered that throughout time, but as we grew and aged, we took on other ideas that we heard. So maybe Dad was going off to work and the little toddler is saying, "Daddy, one more hug," and Mom says, "Oh, come on, honey, come on back. Daddy will be late for work." Oh, late isn't a good thing, we learn there. And then we hear it again because now we're rushing around to get ready to go to daycare as Mom has to go off to work and, "Oh my, hurry up, grab that backpack, Mom's going to be late for work, you'll be late for daycare." Oh, oops, late's not a good thing. Time is of great importance, right? We're learning these things. How about even with the joy-filled things that we did, like baking cookies? That was always a thrill for me. But you had to wait until that bell went off to let you know that time had passed enough so that you could now finally enjoy those cookies. But oh no, you can't enjoy those cookies yet because they're too hot. And you might get burned, so you have to wait the allotted time so that you don't burn yourself. Ooh, burn myself. Now enters fear, concern, worry. Oh my, I am well trained to be cautious and aware of time. Now, I am not suggesting that we just eliminate all time and just do what we want to do. In our humanity, we do need schedules. But do we as much as we profess we do? And if we do, okay, I need to be at school at a certain time because otherwise those kids aren't going to have a teacher there. And we know we don't want to leave them loose, right? 20 kids on the loose running around the school, not a good thing. So I need to be on time and make sure that I am there to pick them up and to keep them safe. So that would be something that would be of time essence that I need to do. But at the same time, do I just have to be locked into that time? Or do I have to realize, do I get to realize that I am timeless? And that I get to step into this eternal loving existence with these children as I keep them safe and try to impart some knowledge in there. So we learn to be time obsessed. It is no wonder that we are time obsessed and we forget our eternal existence, our agelessness. So posing a couple questions, and I think just like me, some of these questions you're going to be able to say, I don't do that. Good. If you notice that it goes, well, I don't do that, that's different than, nope, don't do that. Total difference. You heard it, didn't you, in my voice even? So be aware of resistance. No, that's not me. as opposed to, ooh, I don't think I did that one. Okay, non-resistant. So the first one is, when did you stop enjoying life? When did you decide that you were old? Not just in years on earth, because some decide in their early years that this is just as good as it gets. I'll just take this because it's as good as it gets. Not true. Not true at all. So when did you decide that the next moment's adventures wouldn't be as good as the last? Questions to ponder, questions to at least open up to, even if you're thinking, I don't think I do any of those, good for you. But questions to leave there so that we are ever opening up to the eternal reality of the self. We can always set a new goal. We can always dream a new dream. Age has no requirements about that, or those things have no requirements for age. And if you think that you're too old to pursue your dreams, then feast your ears on this fact. Frank Lloyd Wright completed 1/3 of his life's work between the ages of 80 and 92. So it's not so much in a number, is it? Although we do like to look at those numbers, right? A big part of it is of how we see aging, or as I'm later going to say, saging. A big part of how we see that has to do with our relationship to life and how we see God and how we see the flow and operation of life. So I feel it necessary to, in an idea of eternal life and timelessness, to talk about what we believe in science of mind in the triune nature of God. The idea that all that is of God. There is nothing outside of God. That has so many names, but let's say spirit. So spirit is that loving presence of allness, oneness. And then the second nature is the soul level. We often call it mind or law or principle. It's that part that is married to the love. Love and law is a unity. And so it's not really two separate things, but in our way of understanding, it's two separate things. There is all that is the loving presence of spirit, and then there is that soul body, that subtle body, that part that follows the law and must say yes. It has no choice. And so whatever we place into it, it is going to create, which gives us the third aspect in the triune nature, which we call body, which is the forms, the effects, the demonstrations. And we can use the forms, effects, and demonstrations to take a deeper look at our own life and what we're attracting. So if we're walking around feeling like we're having an issue somewhere physically, it's always good to open up the mind to the greater possibilities and allow to come to us the cause, the original cause for the dis-ease. Because, and when I say original cause, I mean the original cause within our physical being, because original cause is that spirit, that allness of God, and in that is every possibility from which we choose. So we look at the triune nature as all that is, spirit, which has law that is creative and must say yes to whatever idea we place into that mind, creating for us. And so I would invite us to consider, when we look at that, where do we place aging in that? And where do we place timelessness?
Yeah, I love that triune nature, but I think we quite often look at that triune nature in terms of describing how God shows up in the world and God shows up in our lives. Forget that it was also talking about how we show up and how we are and how we work. And we think of God as all that is, and then we think we are the manifest form at the bottom of the three parts there. we are the manifest form. And so we feel like God acts upon us. The truth is, because it's a triune nature of all that is, we are one with all that is. And so we're part of the entire process. We are not just physical in physical form, although it kind of feels that way. And we kind of watch out for our boundaries so we don't bump into people, and make sure to put our hand out so we don't get hugged, and so on. because my physical form takes up a limited space, and I don't want to interfere with someone else's. The challenge is, now when we're talking about time and space are intricately interwoven. In fact, they are one with each other, because time is nothing more than a measurement from one point to another point in space. And so therefore, time and space are inextricably woven together. You can't think of one without thinking about the other. Thomas Troward, one of my favorite writers, says mathematically the infinite, which also includes the eternal, by the way, must be a unity. To think of two unities implies duality, negating the unity, the concept of unity. Unity cannot be multiplied or divided because that would imply multiplicity. Relationship of parts within the infinite implies limitation, and by definition, infinity is limitless. So it causes a little challenge for us living in just the physical, time-oriented space to think about the infinite and the eternal. There's that saying that God can see the finite, but we cannot understand the infinite. That's part of that challenge. The blessing for us is that we can look at it different ways. Infinity occupies all space and time within it, includes all that is. And if we can say that I am, and know that I am, then we know that we are, so therefore that includes us as well. We, in humanity, experience infinity from that perspective. We experience that we are part of infinity, and we can recognize it because we are it. We are moving through infinity, we are moving through time, and we're moving through this physical experience. And it feels like we're living this life, and we get to the end of this life in this human form, and that's the end, because we shift into something else. Well, that's exactly right. Like Newton's second law of thermodynamics, we transfer one energy form into another. But we're constantly doing that all the time, in every now moment. We're shifting from one now moment to the next. We're transferring our energy into another experience, into another time, we could say. But we're actually just moving from one experience, one expression, into another. We're an ongoing continuum of expression, moving and growing. We can recognize this one, but never without recognizing ourselves as an inseparable part of the one. Infinity and eternity are interconnected. Time is nothing more than measurement of space. And we are in that space, so therefore we are in that time. But we are only in that time as long as we hold on to it. As we move through it, we move through eternity. If God is eternal and infinite, by necessity, we must be as well, because we are God in expression.
What a great thought, right? It's just a fascinating and peaceful state of mind to be in, to feel like right now in this moment, I am eternal. There's nothing more I have to do or say or accomplish to be eternal. It's just a gift that's given. And I can delight in it and live in that heavenly state of being in all times. So it's in our own thought of faith, the triune nature, and with a childlike acceptance that each one of us has the power to uproot old patterns and limitations that we've placed within our own mind from that childhood experience on up, and replant a new idea of our infinite life. I told you I was going to say saging because I don't think that I use the word aging as much as I do saging. I kind of like that, even though I'm not much of a drinker. I kind of like the idea of being a fine wine. I don't know if it's because it rhymes, it just has a nice flow off the tongue, or what it is, but a fine wine is saging. And you can actually find t-shirts that say, I'm not old, I'm aged to perfection and full body. Don't you like that one? There's also one, if that one didn't really strike you, there's a t-shirt that says, I'm not old, I'm classic born 1942. And I thought, aren't those great? Now, there is unlimited possibility. You can put anything you want on a t-shirt. So you could also buy the one that says, I never dreamed I'd be a grumpy old woman, but here I am. So it's a choice that we make.
No.
And when we talk in the ethereal, it might seem a little cloudy, but it's not. It's reality. We are ever floating beings in the idea of mind. Some people call it the fourth quarter of life, and what they're talking about is the human life. The idea that we drop the body off at some point and continue the journey of paradise. We are just using this vehicle to transport ourselves to different places in space, in time, but we don't need it in order to survive. And so it puts a whole new twist on aging. And I don't know about you, but I just love to look at pictures of myself from 40 years ago and go, my goodness, I haven't changed a bit. We need to be doing that. When you walk past the mirror, don't go, oh my gosh, is that a new one? No. Step back just a little bit and take a nice look at how you're saging. How beautiful you are, how wonderful you are. What story are we telling our bodies? Because they will respond to the story we tell them. So it's important that we are realizing that we are this sweet heavenly being that is celestial.
I found by reading Troward or reading Ernest Holmes, they use this terminology. It's called things are hoary with age or hoary with time, and meaning they're in antiquity and so on. And I think sometimes it's kind of a challenge for us to figure out what is our concept of time. We were watching a television show recently, and they were talking about the Big Bang and how everything came from the Big Bang and from nothingness. And they said, well, what created the nothingness before that? And so what is your, and then we talk about the universe and going out into the celestial area and see how far does the universe actually go. And they say the universe is growing. Well, is it really growing if it's infinite? Can it be really growing? And so what is your concept of time and space? What is it really? When did time actually begin, or did it? Does there have to be a beginning and an end? Does there have to be? According to quantum science, no, there doesn't have to be, but that's kind of challenging to describe. Here's an interesting thing. The first commandment of universal law in Judaism and Christianity are based on the words that God spoke, or the burning bush spoke to Moses, I am that I am. And it is estimated that Moses was on that mountain about the 13th century BC. That's when we first began to understand our oneness with all that is. Or actually, the facts that we are actually one with all that is. That idea that I am that I am. Well, before that time, there was another saying, Nuk Hu Nuk. You familiar with that one? It comes from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is from about the 20th to 24th century BC in Egypt. Moses, having been raised as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, would have been familiar with this phrase from childhood. So we can recognize that that time was about 20, or that saying coming from about 24,000 years BC, and recorded history goes back to about 3,000 years BC. So even the phrase we use to define the immortality of God is, as far as we know, timeless. Before our recorded history, the universe is timeless. Due to its eternal nature, time is an illusion, or some people say time is an illusion because it has no beginning and no end. Or you can look at it differently and say time is all it is, and so therefore time is boundless. We picture ourselves within prescribed physical parameters within that scheme of all that is, when we are actually eternal beings. Are you being, or are you just existing?
Being. And I have the answer to the other one too. Time came about when man decided it needed some kind of element of time. But the universe doesn't. God gives us the gift of the sunset and the sunrise. That's really all the time that we need, right? So I wanted to share a little bit. I think this is an important aspect of talking about timelessness and saging. A hospice nurse who sat with people the last 12 weeks of life in Australia wrote these ideas for regrets that people had at the end of life. And so they are basically having the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. Frank talked about that a little bit today in the reading. Wish I hadn't worked so hard, had the courage to express my feelings, had stayed in touch with my friends and family, had let myself be happier and realized happiness was a choice. I think that last one is for all of them. Happiness is a choice because the choices that we make bring up the work, the family, the friends. So it's all about the choices that we make. So what keeps people from having these regrets? Well, I return to that idea, the choices we make based on the mindsets that we hold in place. So developing our understanding of the triune nature of life, how life works, and how I can work it, how I can direct it, is empowering. And in Science of Mind, we might say our trouble is a lack of imagining ourselves as always young. Stop holding on to the mindset that I am old and see your youth. Now those are Ernest Holmes' words in the writing Zest for Life. See your youth. Not as a number, but as an idea held in mind that takes after its kind. Keep your thought fresh and invigorated with a zest for life. Know that you are infinitely splendid. Remember the man from Oregon that came to visit once a year for many years, and he had these little cards, and whenever you'd say, "How are you?" he would get out one of his cards and give it to you, and he'd say, "Infinitely splendid." And that was what was on that card, was, I am infinitely splendid, infinitely. Because have you ever thought to yourself, gee, I wish I could be 14 again and ruin my life differently? We do have new ideas now, don't we? Yeah. I don't know about you, but I do not want to go through that 16-year-old age again. So 14 doesn't sound so good to me. But there are moments of feeling like 14 that feel good. And they're infinitely available. If you want something in life that you've never had, you have to do something you've never done. And we can't worry about getting old, but we can worry about thinking old. Don't think old. It's been said that worry is like sitting in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So you can be old at 30, or young at 80 or 90. It's not the 80-year-old that's acting like 30 that we want to be concerned with, but the 30-year-old that's acting like they're 80 that we want to be concerned with. Or even the 80-year-old acting like they're 120. That's my year to die, 120. That's my age I gave myself. And I also came up with this great motto I saw online. It says, Underestimate me. That'll be fun. Don't you love that one? Let's just walk around and say that one to each other.
Yeah, and I think it's the problem we quite often underestimate ourselves, don't we? I think I only have this much time left. That's all that's left. But life is eternal, it keeps on going. Because we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We say that every single week. But I think it needs to be grounded into our memory and our constant awareness that that is the truth of who we are. We are spiritual, eternal, infinite beings. I'm moving through this life experience right now. And as Frank says, I'm taking different brushes and expressing it a little bit differently as I go through. And I painted different pictures when I was 14 than when I was 34 a couple months ago. And it's going to constantly change. Because I am a spiritual, growing, expanding individual expression of the divine. Ernest Holmes says, there is no human and divine, no mortal and immortal. There is, rather, immortality expressing itself in time and divinity manifesting itself through the activity of man. There are no finalities in any science, any philosophy, or any religion. Through the continual emergence of the creative principle, any last finality proves to be but the beginning of a new creative series. This eternal spiral, finding its base in the everlasting reality, will never cease to emerge. Life is an ongoing process. We are constantly growing, expanding, evolving, and moving into a new life experience constantly, eternally.
I want to repeat some of the words that David said in conclusion here from Ernest Holmes. The idea that we are immortality expressing itself in time. Rather than humans having spiritual experience, we are that spirituality. And we express sometimes in time, and that's okay. And also, the words that we are divinity manifesting itself through the activity of humanity. We are divinity. And so in all of our relationships, whether it's with work or others or ourself, we are that divine. And how we show up is telling the world how we believe God shows up. We are the director, the producer, and the actor in our own story. We are valuable, we are important, and we live timelessly. And so it is.